Ghostbusters Afterlife. Let's talk about it. I want to set the table. You are going to get the best version of me having this conversation because
Okay.
I exercised my own demon in my 3,385 word review, which came out late this afternoon, that I put together during the course of the weekend. I wasn't sure if I was going to write about the movie or just talk about it with you. I figured because I value our friendship and I didn't want to end up just like spitting and swearing all over the place, that I'd actually get my thoughts down in something resembling coherence and then have a reasonable discussion with you. I have no idea what you thought of this movie. So let's get into it. You probably can guess my thoughts. I don't think you'd have time to have read
Oh, no, I
my
actually did
screed.
read your review.
Oh
Yeah.
my God,
I
really?
mean, I figure it's like being on a talk show. You got to actually do some research and know how the other person feels about the subject. So,
Poor bastard. I
yeah,
appreciate the click,
yeah,
but I'm
yep, yep,
sorry.
yep, yep, yep. Um, I'm somewhere along the lines of where you're at.
Really?
Now, I did see this movie at an in-person screening. You could take a guest. So I took my guest. So not a guest, but you could take a guest. Um, so I took my daughter, and um, she's seen the original Ghostbusters. She's met a Ghostbuster, like myself. I took her to see Ernie Hudson back in the day. She
You've
has a
met two
vague.
Ghostbusters now.
I have. I've met Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson. I don't know if I'll ever cross paths with Bill Murray, but you never know. He's always showing up in different places.
In Chicago, you just need to go to
Mhm.
more random house
Yeah,
parties because he'll
yeah.
show up and do dishes.
I need to go to, yeah, exactly. I need to go to the Murray restaurant in Rosemont, maybe. But so I knew that she would be somewhat interested, especially with the whole Stranger Things connection with Finn Wolfhard and everything. Um, and we had a good time while watching it, but the more she and I discussed it afterwards, we're like, and I don't know about the version you saw in theaters, but it had one of those things that I hate lately is before the movie, the director came on screen. Did you see that part?
No, they didn't
Okay,
have that.
so Jason Reitman shows up. It's like, hello, everyone. Thanks for taking time to watch Ghostbuster Afterlife. Basically goes on about how personal this was for him, and obviously for those who aren't in the know, his dad directed the original 1984 film, and I guess the sequel too. And so, duh, we knew that, but he was also basically like, this movie, it's two things that kind of irked me. One, he basically said this movie is loaded with Easter eggs, made with love, very personal. Number two, don't spoil it for anybody, let people find it out on their own, blah, blah, blah. Okay. It's just like telling a kid not to touch the oven. It's like they're going to touch the oven, um, there's going to be spoilers later that night. It's just, that's the internet, folks. And the whole Easter egg thing, I was like, oh no, oh no. And sure enough, there was a lot of oh no's. And sure enough, when this movie, as the story begins in this movie, I'm realizing, oh, that's what they meant by afterlife. Okay. All right. Let's see where this goes. And it's a shame because we have a great cast here, and the characters are not as great as the cast, and it's just a shame that they're really just trying to redo and capture the same kind of thing and rehash if you want, and just put it in a different time and location. And it's just like, just doesn't overall, it just does not work. And it comes off as really kind of you know I'll say it, lazy, and not really that altogether funny or thrilling. And it's just, again, rehashing like literally the same. You got the Stay Puff again, you got Gozer again. It's like, really? Why are we couldn't come up with it? Definitely made me, and I was a fan of the 2016, all female led,
Mhm.
Ghostbusters. It definitely made me appreciate that all the more. Um, but yeah, okay, yeah, that's enough.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. No,
Yeah, it's good to be here.
no, I mean there's so much to talk about with this movie, and I
It
don't
is
want to be up all night,
right.
talking about it. But the 2016 Ghostbusters does get a lot of crap. And in a lot of ways, it is kind of a remake of that first
Yeah.
movie. It acknowledges, it doesn't acknowledge that this is in the same universe as the Venkman and Stantz. All the original Ghostbusters who were alive make cameos in the movie, but not as their previous characters. They're playing like
Right.
other people, which is just kind of
Which is just
random
dumb.
and strange. Yeah, but I, at least at the end of that movie, I thought, okay, they've set the table. I like McCarthy and Jones and my God, why I can't think of their names right now. Kate McKinnon,
Yep.
and the main star was
Kristen Wiig.
Kristen Wiig. Yes, thank
Yeah.
you very much. I liked they've got a good
Yeah.
rapport. I want to see what they do in a sequel. But a problem is this movie did not do very well, and so we're not going to probably find out unless they do some kind of like a weird pocket, like into the Spider-Verse with whatever they're doing with this Ghost Core franchise. We're never going to find out what happened with them. But I wanted to see more like what they could do outside the shadow of setting up essentially a remake of Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
With this movie, did you stay till the very end? I saw the mid-credits sequence.
I did.
But
you?
I saw the mid-credits thing with, we're going to spoil this movie, folks. Maybe not get into everything that's wrong with it. You can read my review for more of that. But I did stay for the mid-credit scene where they basically reenact the bit from the first Ghostbusters with, Bill Murray, instead of him shocking some, comely young college student, it's Sigourney Weaver doing that to him and all this other stuff. But at the end of it is partially because I had to get home to put my kids to bed, but partially because I didn't honestly care if there was an after the credits stinger. Was there, and what did I miss?
There was, and it was more of Annie Potts. It was Annie Potts visiting Winston Zeddemore, Ernie Hudson. I was gonna say Ernie Banks, Ernie Hudson's character. Now, so Ernie Hudson's character became like this, I guess, like self-made kind of businessman, millionaire type. We don't know of what or how or why, but towards the end of the movie, he basically looks over the Ecto-1 vehicle and says, "Oh, we're going to take care of you," and so that end credit scene is Annie Potts' character visiting him in his really nice office and everything, and just oh, you've really done well for yourself and this and that. And he's like, yeah, blah blah blah, and then it shows him kind of having somebody drive the Ecto-1 into a garage, like basically following through with what he said. We're going to take care of you and brush you up or whatever, and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
So it's still the old car.
Oh yeah, it's still the old car, and they're gonna. I guess I don't know who drove it from Oklahoma back to New York City. We assume he's in New York City, but he's gonna basically take care of it and keep it, and I don't know what's happening, from there.
That's a complete waste of a stinger because I assumed that's what he was going to do during that bit of dialogue at the end in the field where he says, "We'll fix you up." I caught the fact that he was a millionaire based on the earlier scene. I was paying attention. So at the very least, if you're going to have a stinger, she shows up to the office and she's like, "So what have you been working on?" And then he unveils the brand new tricked out Ecto-1.
And it's weird because it's not like in front of her. It's almost like a cut to a different scene of him kind of like, guiding the Ecto-1 into like a garage or something. And that's pretty much it, honestly, this movie is a waste of the original characters. It really is. I mean, it's there. I mean, I know you and I have done this before, but it's like, when you watch a movie and you start rewriting it while you're watching it, and it's like, that's never a good sign. And I thought like this could have been a great opportunity for the original Ghostbusters, even if they had some type of disagreement or an estrangement from Egon, this could have been a great opportunity to kind of like have old friends reunite and, you know, mend ways, or type of, you know, kind of make some type of a atonement for, you know, friendships gone bad or whatever. That would have been very interesting. You could have had Aykroyd's character, you know, Ray Stantz, really kind of try and get in there and mentor Egon's granddaughter in a way. But no, they, you know, we're reintroduced to Aykroyd's stance through a phone call. And then all three of them show up as anybody would have expected them to in this movie. Anybody who's ever seen a movie, you know, and it really just felt like more of Aykroyd, Murray, Hudson cosplaying as Ghostbusters, showing up and not really even being their characters, just because there really wasn't much time for them to, you know, stretch out and be their characters. They just show up at the end and help with some, you know, proton blast, you know, and that's it.
Yeah, and they have the moment where the ghost of Egon Spengler kind of sidles up to them to be that fourth, you know, stream that's going to blow away Gozer in that cornfield. That's the thing, though. It's hard to watch this movie, especially during that what I'll call a glorified cameo at the end with the Ghostbusters, and not think of how vital and alive they were back in the '84 version. Like Venkman was like yelling at Gozer back then, and he had a real, you know, flair for things. And this is just like Bill Murray. Like, I don't know if he did this on a break from the French Dispatch, but he's just like, "Hey, kids, we're here. I'm Peter Venkman. Yeah,
so we're tired and old. How are you?" Yeah. You know, and you know, Hudson is the only one who really has kind of a sparkle in his eye, and you know, he's probably the only one who's kept in good shape too. But
isn't he the only one who like kind of gives the side eye when Egon shows up? Like,
yeah, like
what the?
Well, what's funny is for a while, a Ghostbusters screenplay sequel or screenplay to a Ghostbusters sequel was always kind of floating around the internet, of the fact that, well, especially because, you know, after Harold Ramis, you know, unfortunately died, you know, what would we do? Well, you know, Egon could come back as a ghost. And that was always kind of like the rumor. And like I said, you really get an idea of like why they're calling it Afterlife in the first, you know, 10 minutes of this movie. You're like, oh, that's what we're gonna do, you know. And basically in the first part of this movie, the first 10 minutes or so, we do see, you know, a shadowy figure, and if you're in the know, then you know that this is Egon, you know. And it's kind of an eye roll moment.
Very much so. It reminds me of, you know, what they did to better effect with Brandon Lee in The Crow. You know, the scene where he is transforming into the Crow, a lot of it is shadows and body doubles and stuff like that, but it's got an artistic sensibility. This feels very much like Jason Reitman or whoever was like, the audience is never going to believe who this character is that we're hiding from everyone. You're never going to guess, guys.
And honestly, there's a certain generation who really won't believe it, or really won't know
or care.
And it's like, I asked my daughter, you know, after we watched it together and had a conversation about the movie, I'm like, did you get the idea that first part, that character that we saw die in the first part of the movie, that was, you know, Egon? And she's like, wait, on the farm in the beginning of the movie? I'm like, yeah, no, I didn't get that, you know. And it's like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's, you know, fan service or something, you know, meant to be some type of a deep cut, but it's like, you know, we knew that, or most of us knew that they were going to bring back Ramis in some way. It's just like how tactful or tasteful would it be, or how cheesy and tactless would it be?
But it raises so many questions,
Hmm.
some of which this particular point I didn't think to write about because it's just sort of occurred to me now. But 1984 was the big, Gozer is coming back and wants
Hmm.
to swallow up the world. The Ghostbusters stop her, him, it, whatever. Then 5 years later is the painting guy. I can never remember his name. Vigo,
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
Vigo. So it's essentially a kind of a redo, except instead of the Marshmallow Man, it's the Statue of Liberty, who's very squishy looking. So kind of a
Hmm.
Marshmallow Man. But then for the next several decades, there's like no paranormal activity, no ghostly outbreaks. Like the New York was the bottle cap there. The cork was put back in the bottle twice, but nothing else has seeped through. So what is it about this, resurrection of Gozer? I guess Egon sensed something was coming. He tried to tell his coworkers about it, but none of them believed him. And they all disbanded and went their separate ways, despite the fact that Egon was the one who predicted the events of the first two movies in some capacity, like worked it out. Like, no, this is
Hmm.
Spook Central. No one thought to give him any credence to it. So he went off to Oklahoma, found this haunted mine shaft with a temple buried in it, uh, and then set up these ghost traps to basically temper anything that might get through. Something did get through and came after him and ultimately killed him. But it's just the idea that, there was no other paranormal activity, in those ensuing decades. Why was he able to come back as a kindly poltergeist to help out his family? Like, I don't understand the rules of like what can get through and what can't. Wouldn't the events of 1984 and 1989 have so shook the foundations of what the world understands about reality that it would be impossible for even a 12-year-old kid in 2021 to be like, what are you showing me on YouTube? What's a Ghostbuster?
Right.
No, it doesn't check out at all.
Yeah. I mean, especially where to begin? But especially like his granddaughter is definitely a science geek, played by McKenna. What's her name?
Grace.
McKenna Grace. Yeah. uh Phoebe. The character's name's Phoebe. I guess she didn't know who her grandfather was, which just seems odd to me. And
It didn't even seem like her mother, Callie, played by the utterly wasted Carrie Coon.
yeah.
It didn't seem like she knew that her father was Egon Spengler either.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I mean, it would have been great if it was just like, yeah, I don't like to bring it up, but he was a Ghostbuster. Okay. Okay. But, and then the fact that he wasn't just estranged from his daughter and family, like he was also uh the requisite deadbeat dad. It's like, what? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like she's, like you said in your review, like Callie, his daughter, is in her 40s, we gather. So she was still around back in 1984. And so that, I mean, technically
One of those note cards was, because on the note we eventually find Egon's lab and there's a giant, I almost call it a serial killer board, but it's just like photographs and
stalker
like,
board.
right, and memorabilia and like these little note cards posted up with like significant milestones in her life. And there's a note card in there from 1983, and I can't remember it. It didn't say like ballet lesson or first steps, or it was some kind of a note about his daughter.
Yeah.
So that means that the year before the events of the first Ghostbusters, Egon Spengler had a daughter that we never knew about as the audience. It's not clear that Venkman and Stantz, certainly not Zedmore, knew anything about it. And if they did, what does that say about these men?
she could have been like 10 years old then, and it's like, wait, what? And it why do we catch on to these things and the screenwriters don't? I don't understand. I don't get it.
It's a giant, it may seem like a nitpick for anyone who hasn't seen Afterlife, but these are the kinds of things that were kind of, it's sprinkled in early on, but I could not let go of it. I'm like, this is not the Egon that I've known and loved. Plus all this other stuff about, yeah, he went crazy. He stole everybody's equipment and then he absconded to Oklahoma. I'm like,
why? Yeah. Why Oklahoma? Why just leave and take everything? What was it, like you said, what was it that made him think, well, there's going to be another apocalypse and Gozer's going to come back? You know, it's like, first of all, you can't come up with any other type of antagonist than to once again have demon dogs, once again have Gozer, once again have, well, we'll do something different with the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. We'll have all these little marshmallow men appear in an empty Walmart late at night, where the only person in there is Gary Gooberman or whatever his name is, played by Paul Rudd, who happens to be the only one in Oklahoma who remembers what happened in New York, and who happens to be a seismologist in a grade school or a high school or whatever, middle school in Oklahoma, a seismologist. I don't know. It's just like, what is happening here?
I would not be surprised to find out that the folks at Sony bought unused footage from Illumination of a Minions movie that never got made, and they just slapped the Stay Puft Marshmallow skin in the 3D program over those little guys, because it's just like really bad, lame Minion humor that keeps popping up. I'm like, no, go away. You're not funny or cute.
Yeah. How many? Initially, yeah, they are cute, and and then all of a sudden, it's the trope of like a cute little character all of a sudden becomes dangerous. You know, it's like, come on, you know. And the weird thing is, like, there's so many callbacks and Easter eggs to the original movie that it's just dizzying and borderline annoying. But okay, you know, the adults are going to get possessed, you know, and the initial buildup is kind of like an Amblin Entertainment movie from the 80s. Okay. And I somewhat appreciated that. I'm like, oh, we're going here. This is going to be a different type of movie. It's going to be more of a kid movie, kind of like a Goonies meets Stranger Things. Okay, cool. You know, but it just became, you know, lame jokes, kind of wasted supporting characters, like the kid that Phoebe becomes friends with. He's supposedly a paranormal expert named Podcast. Why is he named Podcast?
Because he has a podcast.
Because, guys, he's got a podcast. Like you said in your review, he does sometimes review restaurants, and I'm like, how many restaurants can you review in this podunk Oklahoma town? What the heck?
But here's the other thing, getting back to what you said about like who's writing this stuff. He's got a podcast. He's obsessed with the paranormal, and he's never heard of the Ghostbusters.
Hello, what?
It's like, I have a podcast about terrorist attacks. What happened on September 11th? When?
No, I don't know. What? You tell me.
I don't know.
I don't get it, and it just seems like they wanted to round out these characters or the cast with, you know, now they're going to have a new 4 characters who can dress up in Ghostbuster garb. You know, Podcast even gets a jumpsuit that I don't know how it fits him, because the jumpsuits that they had in Egon's basement's, you know, closet were all, you assume they were all originally worn by, you know, Egon and Ray and Venkman and all them.
Is it Is it a meta commentary on how all actors are short? I don't know.
I don't know, but you know, or children. I don't know, but he has his jumpsuit that fits him for some reason, and it has a little podcast on it, like his name. I'm like, I
didn't even catch that. Like, when the hell did he have time to say that?
Hold on, no, he wrote it on there. It's like,
oh, did
podcast.
He?
Yeah, it's like, but you know, even, you know, Finn Wolfhard's character, you know, I like the initial, I like the whole concept sometimes, the way it's used of the whole, you know, exhausted single mom packs up the kids and heads west or whatever, and tries to relocate and assimilate. You know, I like those stories. And there's a little bit of that here with, of course they are evicted from their home or their apartment, and they basically go and pretty much take over Egon's dirt farm. The townies called him a dirt farmer because he was pretty much a recluse.
And it's got the Revelations quote on giant signs outside the farm, because that's a reference to Ghostbusters, although it's a reference to a scene that Egon Spengler wasn't even in.
No, and it wasn't even a line that he used. It was an Aykroyd line.
Right.
And
it was Aykroyd and Zedmore driving over the bridge talking about the end of the world.
Yeah, and then when we see Aykroyd in his scenes in his little office in the phone call, he's got it tattooed on his forearm.
Yeah.
Oh, very funny. The camera, focuses in on it.
Although I wouldn't be surprised if he actually just had that.
Actually does have that, right? It's totally Aykroyd. But the whole, family getting, relocated and assimilated, I like that stuff. There's a bit of, the tall, skinny white boy teenager trying to figure out, how to, figure out what kind of life he's going to have here. Initially they're like, how long are we staying here? And she's like, well, indefinitely. So they're like, all right, well, got to make life work here. And, he does try and, get a job at like this, retro drive-in diner that is like the throwback to the 50s for some reason, because, there's an affinity for that, I guess, in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I don't know, literally like, car hop type of like, skating, roller skating onto being served by roller skating waiters and waitresses. And of course, that's where we meet another character, young character at his age, he's attracted to, and she becomes this totally useless character.
Well, up until the very end, when she helps Phoebe and Callie kind of take on Gozer.
Right. I mean,
somehow.
and nobody except for, say, like, drooling, scary looking, demon dogs. Nobody is really like either totally surprised or just, in disbelief, or just totally freaked out by the fact that, like, oh, there's all these, astral projections or weird, happenings, or, corpses showing up, in town and, outside of town, and this and that. Oh, we're gonna strap on this proton pack and use this, device, this weapon. Oh, it's no problem. It's like, what?
Well, the kids, Trevor, the Finn Wolfhard character, and Lucky, the love interest, the would-be love interest, and a bunch of their friends, they drive out to the middle of nowhere. They go to the abandoned mine where everything happens. And a giant, like, ghostly fiery apparition shoots up out of the ground and like goes up into the sky. And they're like, whoa! But there's not a scene of them like cut to them like scaredly running to the cops or somebody, like,
or even talking to their parents or anything like that. It's like, we gotta get the hell out of here.
Right. Like nothing. And this town, oh my God, this town, there's cars parked all along the street, especially, during the scene where the Ecto one is chasing there. Muncher. Yeah. Like you see people in the restaurant where Mom and Paul Rudd are having their midday lunch date. You see like one person, I think, walking along the street, but there's all this destruction going on, but you don't see people like poking their heads out. You don't hear screams. You don't hear like car alarms and stuff going on. There's no signs of life in this town, which is a big contrast from the first two movies, even the remake of happening in New York, where you get to see this, kind of regular person perspective of all this crazy stuff. Ghostbusters Afterlife has become, it's like what the Marvel movies have become. Everything is, I'm going to kind of knock on the Eternals, even though I love that movie. It's like the closed off fight on the beach in which everything's at stake, but all the people that it's really going to affect are a million miles away.
Right. Totally. And I'm all for changing locations and getting the whole Ghostbusters franchise out of New York City. Great. But at the same time, you're like you said, you're losing that whole real life average Joe being subjected to all this supernatural and paranormal, stuff. It's like there's a whole lot of missed opportunities here. It's like, and that character, that side character, Lucky, her father is the sheriff of this town. Oh, wait, isn't a town called like Somerville or something like that, or Somervale? It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's very similar to the Hellmouth town from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
There you go. And so Bokeem Woodbine plays her father, a sheriff. I'm like, we only see him once, and that's when a crazy scene where Phoebe and I think Podcast and Trevor, they're all put in jail because of what happened when they were trying to chase down Muncher.
No, correction. They were put in jail because there was a scene in Ghostbusters 84 where the Ghostbusters ended up in jail.
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. And Muncher is in for Slimer. Anyway, voiced by Josh Gad. Ooh, yuck.
Really? I missed that part.
Yeah.
Did he talk?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. It's like George Clooney playing the dog in South Park. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
But there's that whole scene in the jail, and that's all we see of the sheriff. And I'm like, you mean to tell me that there's a sheriff in this small town in Oklahoma, and we don't see him doing anything else, investigating or just, even being attacked by a demon dog or something. What is going on here?
Well, I mean, because at this point they were brought in after, I'm trying to keep the events of this movie straight. It's already starting to leave my mind, but Phoebe and Podcast had been out in the middle of nowhere testing out the proton blaster, and they blew some stuff up. And then that's when they kind of discover the Muncher character. Yeah. They blow up a whole bunch of stuff inside this, old factory or whatever. Nobody in town is hearing these explosions. Yeah. There's nobody going out to, like you say, investigate. What was just blew my mind is when Callie, the mom, comes to the station to bail out her kids. Phoebe's all indignant, like, no, but we actually saw ghosts. And she reaches for the gun of the proton pack and aims it at the cops. And then mom's like, put that down. We'll deal with this when we get home, young lady. I'm like, no, you'll deal with it like 6 slugs in your kid's forehead. There's no way that either she's dead or she's right back in lockup.
Oh yeah, well, you're going back to jail. It's like, what? and I like the idea of like, I think Paul Rudd and Carrie Coon, they have great chemistry together, and they were really great together. Even when they were possessed, even though it was weird to see them once they were possessed. I liked the interaction they had, like when they were just, kind of normal. I did, again, not to say that I really liked their characters, but I think that it was good to see them working alongside each other. And of course, once both of them get possessed, they have to kind of like, get all sensual and get it on with each other and turn into demon dogs. And so Gozer can come out of her hole, its hole. And it's just like, okay, we're doing this, Rick Moranis, Sigourney Weaver, they did the same thing. Okay. Why?
Carrie Coon shows up in the Sigourney Weaver dress.
Well, I don't think it's the same dress. She was wearing some kind of like a gold thing. Wasn't Dana Barrett wearing some kind of a red thing?
It was pretty much the same. It was like it was like the same kind of fabric. It was like a reddish gold, not to split hairs, but the other thing is, it seemed like when Dana Barrett and Louis Tully got possessed by the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper, they just happened to find each other and start making out. And you're not sure if they actually did anything beyond that. In this movie, there's like this new bit of lore, like they have to get together and actually, have sex in order to bring forth Gozer. I'm like, what is this movie now?
Right.
and on top of that, like, it's not just that they bring back the terror dogs. It's that they have a scene where someone's going to do this, if it's not already online by now. They're going to do a split screen on YouTube of the 1984 transformation scene where you've got Sigourney Weaver and Rick Moranis, in that kind of like side by side, and lightning strikes them and they start shaking, they turn into terror dogs. That exact scene is recreated here with these characters. Also, the scene where Paul Rudd is running out of the Walmart, the exact being chased by the terror dog, the exact same scene of when the terror
Rick
dog
Moranis.
runs out of the apartment, down to the fact of the dog like running out, bumping into something, like skidding and bumping into something and then regaining its footing. It's like, this is not a tribute. This is just a Xerox copy. And it amazes me that anyone thinks this is like a love letter to the fans. I'm sure there are fans out there who are going to be like, oh my God, I remember that. That's so cool. But to me, a real fan is someone who fell in love with the Ghostbusters because it was original and they want to see something actually done with this story 30 years later.
And it made me think about, I didn't tell you about the part in the beginning before this movie started when Jason Reitman shows up to say hello to the audience. He does mention, this was a personal project, labor of love. My father was pretty much on set almost every day. So imagine, if your parents showed up at your job, how great that would be. And he's like, and I'm wondering, I'm like, did Jason Reitman have any agency in this movie? I mean, I know he co-wrote it and everything, but it's like, I don't know. If my child decided to take take the characters that I made a hit movie out of and make a sequel to it, I would kind of want her to do something totally different, instead of just like, so was Ivan Reitman just saying, hey, yeah, you should use Gozer again. Hey, yeah, you got to have the Stay Puft. Oh yeah, that's going to be great. People are going to be like, oh, great callback. Oh yeah, this is the 38th callback. Oh, this is amazing. It's like,
there's a Twinkie in the glove box. Remember Twinkies? I feel like that situation could be read one of two ways. Neither of them are particularly flattering. Well, one kind of is. Like, if you're just going to do this lame sort of remake of the original Ghostbusters, are you saying to your dad, look, I can do it better now because I've got all these new toys. People are going to remember this one. Or it could be like, I've made this really lame remake of your movie that's so terrible that no one's ever going to watch it again. They're only going to want to go back and watch the original Ghostbusters.
It's so crazy. I watched Ernie Hudson, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd appear on Seth Meyers and Jimmy Fallon to promote this movie. And, Aykroyd, it's amazing that Bill Murray showed up to that. I mean, he's very much like, okay, and Aykroyd's all animated and he's talking about how he came up with the idea of Ghostbusters, and I highly recommend watching the making of Ghostbusters documentary that came out, within the past like 2 or 3 months. Really good, which goes into all that. But Aykroyd's wearing like a black baseball cap with the Ghostbusters logo, and I'm like, but I remember, like, one of the main reasons why they didn't play their characters in the 2016 movie is that they wanted to let another generation take over, and if they were going to be in that movie, which they were going to play totally different characters, and I could kind of understand that. And even when I was at a theater where I met Aykroyd, and I watched as he engaged with the audience as kind of like a Q&A before a showing of Blues Brothers. He even said, I'm moving on, I'm letting other actors take over, I'm letting Melissa McCarthy do her thing now. And well, lo and behold, money, on Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers, he's like, well, this was just, with Jason Reitman showing up and, being a fan of, his movies and, obviously having a connection. I mean, we've known little Jason Reitman was on the set in the original Ghostbusters, and we just had to, come back, and it was such a great script. And I'm like, how many times, how many times did actors say like, oh, it was such a great script, we had to come. I'm like, are you ever going to say like, well, the script is all right, but I just couldn't deny the money? It's like, come on, man.
That stuff will come out, 20 years from now. And well, they don't really do Playboy interviews anymore, but in an interview,
right.
it's like Michael Caine, I think, talked about like Jaws the Revenge, like, yeah, I needed a pool, but he wasn't saying that at the time of the, in
No.
1987. But yeah, it is just a letdown because there's nothing in here that would indicate why this movie needed to be made, what made Ghostbusters special. There's so much quotable material and visual panache in the original Ghostbusters, a movie that I watched it a few years ago with Cole because he had never seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry to say that my estimation of Ghostbusters kind of went down because I'd never quite registered how much of a creep Peter Venkman was in that movie.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I can't quite get behind this, but everything else about it is pretty fantastic.
Oh yeah.
But no one's going to be quoting anything from this movie.
Well, this movie requotes lines from the original one. It's like,
right.
Like, again, going back to Bokeem Woodbine's sheriff, he literally says to the incarcerated teens, who are you going to call? You got one call to make. Who are you going to call? And her call is to raise stands? What? Oh,
right. And that call lasts like 5 minutes of screen time. I don't know about Oklahoma jail phone calls, but I feel like if you call your lawyer, say, come pick me up, and then it's done. Yeah.
Time's up, dude. You know, it's like,
right.
What?
I want to get back to this Egon problem because you kind of touched on something, or you planted a seed in my head of how they could have fixed this problem. With Carrie Coon, you had mentioned, like, what if she was embarrassed that her dad was a Ghostbuster? Why would you be embarrassed that your dad was a Ghostbuster? Because he was part of saving the world twice. Well, when they first get into the farmhouse, they see up along the ceiling, there's all these numbers that are kind of written in, black marker, and you don't really know what that means. Later on, when they get down to Gozer's temple, it turns out that they correspond to dates throughout history when there have been apocalypse events.
Yeah, right? Years. Yeah.
Right. And it's curious because they show 1984 and they show 2021. I don't think they show 1989. This movie is like obsessed with discounting Ghostbusters 2, except for one line of dialogue where they say, no one's seen the Ghostbusters disbanded 30 years ago or something like that, which would put it more in line with Ghostbusters 2. But wouldn't it be interesting if Egon had been mistaken? He wrote his own set of dates along his house, but a few of them were wrong. So maybe he was going out and telling everyone, look, like kind of like this religious thing, like the world is going to end in 1996. And it comes and it goes because he was getting wrong information. He was on the right track, but maybe he gets committed. Maybe the world turns its back on him because he was this great hero who saved everybody, but now he's a charlatan and he goes insane or something like that. And that leads to the estrangement with his daughter. And that's why his daughter doesn't want him to know the grandkids. She's trying to protect them from his madness or something, but then it turns out he's right. That's a simple 2-3 lines of dialogue tops. You don't even need to do like archival footage or anything to set it up. You just say, this is what happened. We don't talk about crazy grandpa anymore, but it turns out he wasn't crazy. And that, earns the nice touching moment at the end, beyond the fact that, oh, look, they digitally recreated Harold Ramis and now I'm supposed to cry.
Yeah. I was thinking about like, what would have been a better way for the three of them to appear? Again, after that phone call that
the four of them, David, don't be racist.
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
Racist. After that phone call that Stans has with Phoebe, I mean, it would have been like the three of them show up, Winston, Venkman and Stans show up in the nick of time to help out at the farm. Okay. What transpired between that phone call and them showing up? You could have had this like Winston has all this money now. I'm playing it out in my head, as I'm checking out from the movie. I'm playing it out in my head. I'm like, okay, Ray obviously called these guys. Winston has a private jet or whatever, and they reluctantly pick up, Murray or whatever, or Venkman, and they could have been really interesting conversations. Like, guys, I know this is unbelievable to think, but I got a call from, Egon's granddaughter of all people, whatever, it's like, wait, he had a kid, or what, it's like, why couldn't we just have these weird conversations or awkward conversations on the plane ride there or whatever. Why does it have to be this surprise, non-surprise at the end when we know that they're eventually going to show up? It's kind of insulting. I don't know.
It was honestly a surprise to me that they showed up, simply because at that point in the movie, like when Phoebe and Callie and Lucky are all getting their butts handed them by Gozer, I was so checked out. They're like, oh shit, yeah, that's right, the Ghostbusters. Okay.
They kind of have to show up, right?
But I was just so not invested in it that I'm like, oh wow, it's quote unquote surprise cameo. Let me ask you this question, because I'm totally in. There's a much more interesting movie happening on the fringes of this one. There's also the weird subplot with Lucky claiming to have a boyfriend as Trevor, who's interested in her. Like, she's constantly giving the kind of the cold shoulder. I don't know if she had a boyfriend or what. They make a big deal at the beginning of like the guys in the kitchen giving Trevor crap about liking her. So I'm thinking, oh, these are going to be integral characters to this, these side stories, but they all just kind of disappear.
Oh, yeah.
The archetype, if they're going to steal from Ghostbusters, if you're going to go down this alley of the single mom with the two kids moving to the strange town and none of them want to be there, steal from the best and just rip off the Lost Boys. You got all your story beats there. You could really make something, the Lost Boys meets Ghostbusters, done. I'm not advocating that. I'm saying just go wholly original with the entire thing.
Oh man, could have had like Corey Feldman running the hardware store instead of Carrie Coon's husband, Tracy Letts.
That would have been perfect. But
great.
But one thing I want to ask about, because you mentioned Winston could have had a private jet. Did it bother you at all that all of the technology in this movie is from the 1980s in terms of the ghost busting technology? Because Egon and Ray, I guess, developed all of this stuff. I don't think Venkman had anything to do with it. He was like ordering pizza.
Right.
And Zedmore was just like, I'll just,
what the heck's I just want a job.
Right. Yeah, exactly. If there's a paycheck in it, I'll say whatever you want. But there was such cutting edge, cool stuff for the 1980s, design wise, that you would think that these guys, even if things are drying up as far as business, if Egon really believed that the world was coming to an end, I would think that he would keep up with the times and not just be dealing with these same janky old proton packs and rusty ghost traps. He would have like some Apple level shit going on.
Or even if he didn't, Ray showing up at the end with the other two Ghostbusters could have had a more updated, sleeker version of the, the proton packs and the, everything. And Venkman would have been like, dude, what is this, man? And Winston be like, I'm just glad to have this, this is great, whatever,
he'd be the Tony Stark of that whole outfit. And like, I had the boys of the lab whip this up.
Yeah, that would have been great. But no, I mean, I don't understand. And looking at the credits on IMDb for this movie, you have, Bob Gunton was the ghost farmer. Who was the ghost farmer? Anyway, J.K. Simmons was Ivo Shandor.
Evo
Shandor.
Yeah, you didn't recognize him?
I didn't. Okay.
For the 30 seconds of screen time.
Yeah, 30 seconds. I mean, he was so much like in makeup. I honestly didn't recognize him. But the weird part is Sigourney Weaver is listed, and she's not in the movie. She's in the first end credit scene. And in the IMDb, she's listed as Dana Barrett Venkman. Did you get any idea, any inclination that these two were married in that end credit scene?
No. I mean, no. But again, to something that you had mentioned, and I kind of brought up in my review, I didn't see Dana Barrett and Peter Venkman. I saw Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver. It's like they were visiting the set. Mm-hmm. And then someone said, hey guys, look, I found in our Columbia Pictures warehouse the old machine. Remember, Bill, you used this to zap the people in the college. Would it be cool if we hooked you guys up and just like just say something, just do some cool stuff? Here are the cards.
And in the beginning of the movie, what is Janine Melnitz, Annie Potts, great Annie Potts, what is she doing in Oklahoma?
I don't know. She's being Annie Potts because once again, that's not Janine Melnitz.
I know.
There's no like, if you're the one line that isn't in this, I don't think is "Ghostbusters. What do you want?" You know, that she doesn't have that attitude anymore.
Yeah, can't check that off. But did she get into a real estate career? Did she have a fling with Egon? Is she Callie's long lost mother? We don't know about Callie's mother. So it's like, what is the connection here? It's like, just because she has to show up because she's Annie Potts and she was in the original Ghostbusters.
Look, if you're going to have Annie Potts go to Winston Zeddemore at the post-credit sequence, at least have some kind of line of dialogue about how she was keeping tabs on, everyone thought that Egon ran away and couldn't be found. But, Winston, with all his resources, sent his Pepper Potts, his Annie Potts, to keep tab, to be the one to keep an eye on everybody in case the world came to an end.
Yeah, it could have been like, thanks for going over there and checking things out, letting us know, that would have been perfect. But oh boy, yeah, I don't know where we're going from here. Apparently, this movie is doing really well.
I did want to talk to you about that. I am gonna call bullshit on that. The headlines. I was kind of out of town this weekend, so I wasn't doing a whole lot of stuff online. Plus, I was writing that gargantuan review that thankfully one person has read in its entirety. I appreciate it.
No problem.
But I kept seeing these like little headlines like Ghostbusters blows past box office expectations. I'm like, whoa.
What expectations were they?
But here's the thing. I got back today and I started looking into it. It was like Ghostbusters debuts with $44 million. I'm like, you mean like 144 million, right? No, $44 million, because the box office expectations were $30 to $35 million opening weekend for Ghostbusters Afterlife, one of the most anticipated kind of sequels being hyped up everywhere. They brought back Ecto Cooler, for crying out loud. And we're supposed to believe that it's a roaring success, that it made possibly a quarter of its initial budget and like a 16th of its marketing budget. No one's going to see this thing second weekend.
I don't know if that was the expectations because we're technically still kind of in a pandemic. I don't know, but
you can't use that excuse anymore. Not saying you, but every time a movie comes out and it underperforms, they're saying, well, we're still in a pandemic. But then you get Venom 2 coming out and making $100 million over its first 3 or 4 days. And then I'm looking at, really, Ghostbusters made less than half of that.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. There's definitely, the initial opening weekend audience is definitely those who grew up with Ghostbusters, or those who are, Stranger Things completists. I don't know. But I think that, there's going to be definitely a significant drop going into Thanksgiving weekend. I'm not sure why this didn't come out around Halloween or something or whatever, ghosts in the title, but whatever. And next week, Thanksgiving weekend, typically we have a Disney animated feature, and that's what we're having again with Encanto, and I forget what else is going to be coming out, but I think, movie theaters are going to be getting a lot more people coming back as opposed to last year at this time. But I don't know if they're going to go out to see Ghostbusters. I don't know. I think anybody who wanted to see it saw it opening weekend.
Yeah, I just don't imagine the word of mouth is going to be like, you have to go see this. I feel like it's going to be like, it was all right. It'll probably be on cable in like 2 months. I mean, as far as the timing goes, I agree. This should have been like a Halloween release, but it's also kind of like an August
summer
movie. Yeah. Because it's about, kids in school, like summer school.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing that Aykroyd said to Jimmy Fallon is like, this is, one of those movies that, we used to have where as people are exiting, they're getting right back into line to see it again. I'm like, wow, dude. Okay.
Those are the studio plants that they put in there to hype up ticket sales.
Bill Murray and Ernie Hudson are like, yeah, I'm like, wow. He'll be going back to selling his Crystal Head vodka.
I think he's got to stop sampling his Crystal Head vodka on TV.
No kidding.
But all respect for Aykroyd and
Yeah.
Murray and Hudson. I mean, that's one of the disappointing things about this is it really does not do anything to, again, remind us of what great comedic talents these guys were at one point, in some cases still are in Murray's case.
Yeah.
But all right, I'm ready to put Afterlife to sleep. Thank you for going on this journey with me. I'm, as much as I don't like the fact that anybody might not enjoy a movie, especially one that's like over 2 hours long. Remember, folks, the first Ghostbusters was an hour and 45 minutes from front to back.
This was over 2 hours, right?
This was 225 or something like that. And wow. But yeah, as much as I don't like the fact that you didn't like it and I didn't like it, I do like the fact that we had this conversation. So thank you for talking through it with me.
And I know we're closing here now, but we didn't totally go into like all the whole like Harold Ramis as a spirit thing at the end.
Let's talk about that. Okay, I'll
so
pull over.
I know some people are like, oh, that was really touching. Oh, that was really great and everything. And thank the Lord, he did not utter a word. And I know you mentioned this in your review and everything, but like, I am so glad that did not happen. Like, they could have easily gone back and used, they could have AI'd, his lines from previous movies or whatever,
or found a mimic.
That would have been horrible, but it is just really weird. Like the whole thing is just, initially I'm like, oh, no, this doesn't work.
Here's the thing. My issue with it, if it had just been a flash, an image of him very quick. So like the whole thing is Egon wired his farm to be a giant ghost trap. And there's like all these like transformers and things all over the place and like, ghost boxes. If in keeping with the way that his sort of kindly poltergeist had manifested of like, lighting up lamps and moving chess pieces around, if at the end of this movie, all of those kind of electrical bits had come together to form this like giant energy field to envelop and dispel Gozer. And then for a minute, like all these lights kind of come together to form the image of, Egon
not
Spengler.
A straight up ghost, but kind of like an image.
Sort of like you see of Patrick Swayze at the end of Ghost as he's about to fly off. This kind of like a flash of a golden image of someone you recognize. That would have been cool. But the problem is, he's an embodied spirit and he spends way too much time on screen. The fact that he doesn't say anything feels really awkward. I'm really, like, you're hanging out with your family and your old friends for like 15 minutes and you don't say anything.
Nothing.
Especially since you've neglected all of them, even if it's like, I hope you forgive me or whatever.
And Carrie Coon and McKenna Grace, they're even like hugging this apparition. It's like, wait, I don't know. I know we could do that, but okay. Let alone have some kind of awkward, weird, ghostly reunion.
It'd be cool if they hugged him and they came away and they're all slimy.
Right. That would have been awesome. Oh my gosh. Geez. I loved Harold Ramis so much, and it was just weird to see that, play out the way it did. And it's, kind of disappointing. And I know that some viewers just won't understand and won't get it and won't care, but I don't know. I almost wish that it all we saw were hints of him, and we had that opening where we don't even see his face, and that's it. It would have been nice, but that ending just really didn't work for me.
I never met Harold Ramis, but I was in the same room with him once. It was the Music Box Theater, a long time ago. They did the premiere of the movie Year One, which I think was the last thing he directed.
Yeah.
And he was presented with an award. They showed this really lovely like clips package. It was at the Music Box Theater, so it was the perfect venue.
Yeah.
And it was like clips of his, highlights from his career. And he got up and he spoke, and it was very touching and moving. And then they showed Year One, and No one laughed during that entire movie.
Ouch.
And then it kind of let out, and it's like, I don't want to remember Harold Ramis this way. I don't think anyone knew if he was like sick or anything at this point, but it's kind of like you're going to show me clips from Ghostbusters and Stripes and Groundhog Day, and then you're going to show me year one and be like, yeah, this is the same guy. No. And I feel the exact same way about Ghostbusters Afterlife. Like, this is not the tribute that anybody thought it was.
Yeah, if we somewhere down the road, you know, Carrie Coon gets a Lifetime Achievement Award or something, hopefully they don't show clips from this movie.
No. But yeah, okay. So I really am going to let you go because I got to get to sleep. Yeah. and you got to get to sleep. But yeah, thank you very much, David Fowley, of keeping it real. Everybody, I'm sorry, I've been out of the loop. Have you reviewed this yet?
Not yet.
Are you going to bother?
I will eventually.
Okay. Yeah. Well, when I see that post, I will link to that down in the description. But for those of you watching or listening to this, don't let that hold you up from following David Fowley over at Keeping It Real. That's REEL. And also like and subscribe to this video. Please subscribe to the channel. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thanks a lot, David, and we'll talk soon.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.